Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Soccer Scene, the 24th episode of the Soccer Scene with Sport and Limerick, and delighted to be joined once again by Noel this evening as we preview between Treaty United and Usher Celtic, which will take place in the Markets Field this weekend on Friday, the FAI Cup game. Well, obviously, Treaty will be going into the game as the league side, the favourites, the Electricity League side, home advantage as well. It's funny because, he probably won't have ambitions, Noel, obviously, as we know, of winning the FAI Cup. You're always talking about a good cup run, but it's far from a glamorous tie, this one. Also, you'd imagine Usher Celtic will definitely test Treaty as well.
Yeah, I think they will, I suppose. Normally, it was probably a trickier game. I think being at home on the Friday night is certainly a big advantage. You wouldn't fancy going to Dublin for that game on a Saturday or a Sunday with a big local crowd. Usher Celtic, they're kind of new. They're new enough to the Leinster Senior League. Certainly a very proud club from Island Bridge. They're not far from Phoenix Park, and there'd be a real local flavour about them. They'd all be hardy boys, if you like, and they're very proud of that club and what they've done so far. Actually, it was only a couple of years ago that Fairview beat them in the FAI Junior Cup 1-0. I think it was in 2020. And some very good players, players with real pedigree coming there as well. I think it's a good draw for Treaty. They're obviously on a good run. And look, you do like to progress certainly a few rounds in the FAI Cup. You certainly don't want to go out in the first round. And I think the big advantage for Treaty is the fact that they have, probably 20 games played, and the likes of Usher Celtic and the other junior clubs or Leinster Senior League clubs are probably only at the pre-season stage now, which is a huge advantage for Treaty on Friday night.
Absolutely, that is always the way it goes. And team selection, Noel, for Treaty, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because, you do obviously want to get through in the Cup as much as you can. But obviously we spoke last week about the new arrivals at Treaty, which I'm sure Tommy Barrett will want to see more of, particularly as we come in effectively the final third of the season. You want options and you want to give game time to players. What would you do, I suppose, in your shoes if it was you in this situation? Do you go play your strongest team because I suppose they've had the break and be fresh going into this, or would you try and look at other players maybe that have been on the fringes and the new arrivals?
No, I'd certainly pick my strongest team. It's the biggest cup competition in the country, the most prestigious. It's a long time since a Limerick team have got close to the final. And, you said it yourself, they had no game last week, which means it might be, if you like, nearly 3 weeks before fellas would have a game if you left them out of this. I think it's important that Treaty put out their first 11 and keep that momentum going as well, which is important. Keep guys ticking over, keeping their form in and their eye in. And sure, they do have another week before the next league game. So I don't see any point in resting players you'd like if you were comfortable in the game, maybe in 60 or 65 minutes. If things go to plan, then you can certainly empty your bench a little bit and maybe throw on guys that you haven't seen. Because certainly even at that stage, it'll be a good test for those lads as well.
Absolutely. I know Treaty obviously last year as well played in their first FAI Cup game against Dundalk, ran them very close actually. But you probably answered my question, Noel, or my next topic in that sequence there in terms of priority of the FAI Cup, because obviously we know Treaty will be desperate to get to the playoffs. We know an equal last year anyway. But, will the FAI Cup, I said, be a high on their priority list? As you said as well, being starved of success in the FAI Cup in Limerick. You have, I think, what is it, 2 semi-final appearances in 28 years, if I'm not wrong. I think that's correct, which just shows you, other senior teams, obviously Treaty are new to it. It just shows you how little success and how little of a run we've had in the cups. So you do think that it should be at least, some bit of a priority that you play your strongest team?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's no reason really not to play your strongest team. There's no argument against it. If guys are fit and well, they should be well capable of playing at least a game a week, and they had no game last week, so they will be nice and fresh as well. And you can't take these games, for granted either, because they do have some players, with a small bit of pedigree. I know Robbie Martin is with him. He's nearly 40 now, but certainly had a very, very good career. with the likes of Longford and Dundalk and Drogheda. And Jordan Buckley is a guy that people talk a lot about. I did hear today that he went on holidays last weekend. Now, whether it's only for a few days or for a week, not sure if he's available on Friday, but if he is, he's certainly a handful. He had a bit of a spell with Shelbourne and is very, very highly rated and looks like a guy that will probably end up back in the Electricity League at some stage. So it'll be interesting to see if he's playing. But if he is, he'll certainly be a handful for the Treaty defence.
That's the mad thing about it, Noel. We have seen it in the past, haven't we? Players that go down to, we'll say, junior or level or Leinster Senior League level, they play with these teams. We forget in the Electricity League, because we might not follow them anymore, where they are. Then you have non-league teams coming into the FAI Cup. You see 3 or 4 players that you're very familiar with, and all of a sudden they can dump an Electricity League team out. So Treaty will be desperate to make sure that's not going to happen to them. Yeah,
and certainly one of the best ways of doing that is by putting your strongest team out and getting on top of them early. And look, it will be difficult for them. I'm sure most of them are working. I know Tommy talks about that with his own group as well. But certainly a big advantage to be at home on Friday night and not travelling from Dublin on a Friday evening and all that entails. And the fact that it could possibly be their first or second game. It will be a step up, there's no doubt about it. With the Premier experience that's in that Treaty team. The likes of Enda Kern in top form and Mark Ludden, 3 clean sheets as well. And a bit of momentum there. And look, I think they'll be determined to keep that run going. You've touched on the playoffs a few times. That's certainly hotting up in the last few weeks as well. And there looks like there's going to be a right fight for the final couple of spots, possibly even with Waterford involved. So, it's a lot to play for. But there's never any harm in winning a game. And it would be nice to see them get a few rounds in the FAI Cup. And certainly it's good for the coffers within the club as well, because it's certainly a very expensive business to be running an Electricity League club and what it all entails, and a couple of good draws in the FAI Cup certainly help in that respect.
And that was an important point, I suppose, because not only will Treaty be desperate not to become a scalp for Usher Celtic, obviously themselves, they'll have their own designs on getting a big draw, a type of draw against the likes of maybe Shamrock Rovers, St. Pat's. I know you want to go far in the competition, but as you said, to draw a crowd in Limerick, no disrespect to Usher now on Friday night, I don't expect there to be a very big crowd at this game. A lot of people will take for granted there may be a bank holiday as well. Treaty, maybe they'll take for granted Treaty going through. As you said, for financial reasons, Treaty will be desperate, to have the opportunity to play one of the bigger clubs as well, you'd imagine.
Yeah, absolutely, sure. And there's the likes of Cork City to be drawn as well. It would be nice to go a couple of rounds and have a chance to get back at Cork City for, the heavy defeats that they've inflicted on Treaty this year. And listen, and there is other draws. You mentioned Shamrock Rovers, Bohemians, obviously, even away from home. You could possibly get a bigger gate away from home, the way the gate is carved up with those FAI senior games. I think with the clubs receiving 40% each of the gate, with the remaining 20% going to the FAI itself. So listen, it would be nice to see a cup run.
We did speak, Noel, obviously about playing the strong team. We've done that. What is, I suppose, Treaty's strong team? We know a certain amount of players. We know the likes of your Jack Brady's, Mark Luddens, Jack Lynch's, if they're available, Sean Gearns and the Curran, those type of players. And you did allude to it. It was interesting enough last week, saying that when Callum McNamara moved out of Treaty United's midfield, you feel like they need him in there. I mean, what do you think will be the makeup of the Treaty midfield for that game?
I suppose it's very hard. It's difficult to predict. I do think that it is an issue overall. I think, in fairness to Tommy, he shuffled the deck a few times. I think there's a lack of consistency in there. You see Joe Collins, for example, plays well in a game, and then the next time it looks like he hasn't turned up or has a difficult period, and then he's taken off and someone else goes in there, and after a few games he's back in as well. Lee Devitt has performed in kind of fits and starts. I suppose the fact that Tommy has signed not one but possibly 2 right backs. We spoke about them last week. Is it Daniel Collins and
Collins?
Yeah, and the lad from Cove. He may possibly think of trying to put Jack Lynch back in there, which I think would be, look, if one of those guys work out to be as good as Jack has been since Charlie Fleming left, and I know he's been moved around a good bit, But I certainly think that Jack Lynch playing in the middle of the park with an in-form right back, whoever that may be, would certainly strengthen Treaty's hand as we get towards the business end of the season.
There's probably at this level, Noel, considering some of the scouts that have been taken in the past, not that they're all that great, will not need any reminding, that they could be the next victim. But you'd imagine your more experienced players in the dressing room, maybe you felt like that when you were with Limerick. If you got a lower team, maybe in a League Cup or or an FAI Cup, you'd be looking at your senior players to make sure that in training the tone is set during the week and that there is absolutely no room for complacency. Yeah,
and I think you have the likes of Jack Lynch and Mark Ludden to do that. And you're right. I remember we drew a similar team a long time ago. Is all I can say. Glebe North. They were kind of out around Balbriggan, and it was a Sunday evening, and there was a big crowd there, and it was a really difficult game. I remember we actually went to goal down. But John White came off the bench to score a winner, and it was a really important win and a big win. I remember being in Dublin as well with Wexford Youths and had a real scare of a day before getting out 1-0. These teams be very tough, they'll be very proud. And I'm sure the likes of Mark Ludden will be ramming it home to the rest of the squad that they can't take anything for granted. Sure, he'd like an FAI Cup run as well. He knows he's not going to be involved in too many more FAI Cup senior campaigns in his career, and he knows the value of them. And sure, look, there's no reason why Treaty can't go a couple of rounds in it.
Yeah, without shedding more light on it, Noel, obviously, just for, I suppose we've done this to date in terms of how we should be more successful in general in soccer in this city and county. It's just astonishing, really, though, isn't it, that it's taken so many decades? And when I just found it mad to think that it's only been 2 semi-final appearances in my lifetime anyway, and it's just it's hard to pinpoint obviously the situation, because the way obviously league, you can understand because the consistency isn't there or the quality isn't there. Normally every team seems to get a run maybe towards a final even, and even in the Premier Division Limerick FC never really seemed to get anywhere near that outside the semi-final. I will point out, to be fair.
Yeah, look, I remember my second time we had a fantastic win in Drogheda, against a really good Drogheda side. I think they were the Premier League champions, and we beat them after replay. It was fantastic. I wasn't actually around for the next round. I think it was UCD. No, I wasn't suspended. I had departed for business reasons.
I forgot about that timeline of events. Yeah,
I think it was UCD. I think in the next round, but. Listen, a lot of it comes from from the manager and his desire. I never actually fielded a weekend team for an FAI Cup game. I remember being down in Wexford, and we drew Derry City in the first round. I remember amongst other players, James McLean was playing for them, and we beat them 4-1. But we were really well up for it, and we wanted to do well. And I suppose, unlike maybe this year, where it could be difficult, I think you're right in terms of the Limerick teams in the last maybe 10 or 15 years that won the first division title and ran away with it. Certainly one year, you certainly would have thought that was a good year maybe to go on an FAI Cup run. Now I can't remember who beat them or who didn't beat them, but it certainly comes from within, and it comes from the manager. And if he wants to do well, I think all those cups should be taken very, very seriously. They're very difficult to win and progress, and you just can't pick and choose the opportunities where you get your cup run and get your little luck. So you should take every opportunity you can.
Yeah, that Drogheda game, Noel, I do remember that being a particular scalp at the time. You were going well in the league at the time. I think you could have even been unbeaten, but you were on serious run. But Drogheda also were the big boys at the time. People probably wouldn't remember that now, but they were very strong at the time. And the likes of Stuart Byrne and others playing with them, and Paul Doolan managing them. But that was a big night. And I know that Tommy Barrett was in your midfield that night, Noel, as well. So you'd be hoping, because he's had nights like that he'd be, instilling that in the players, that this is a great competition to be involved in, and I'm sure he is.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. Look, it was a great night for Limerick, there's no doubt about it. I remember Keith Fahey was playing with them as well. They had a Finnish international on the bench. Yeah. Really, really good side. We probably should have won it in Rappan. I thought we were denied a stonewall penalty, and Paul Doolan was very confident that we'd be turned over. He was having a pop at the pitch in Rappan, but we certainly had a great belief at that time. There was a great group of players, and Tommy was in outstanding form as well. It was Shane Gearan who got the winner. So listen, a great night and great memories, and these are the things you remember when you look back at your career. And certainly, I'm sure Tommy is as ambitious as anyone to do, to win a cup or certainly go a long way in a cup competition. And this is his next opportunity.
Absolutely, and we do hope that Treaty United can get to the next round of the competition with a victory. It would be remiss of us, I suppose, Noel, not to mention that there isn't just one Limerick team in this round of the draw. You also have Pike Rovers taking place. A huge weekend for Pike, to be fair. They have a long trip to Letterkenny, Noel. They're playing Bonagee United in their tie. It's looking at it from the Treaty point of view, we did study that and how, they can be caught for complacency. I suppose Pike, on the other hand, they haven't finished that long, but at the end of the day, it's still nearly probably 7 weeks or so since they've played a competitive game. To try and get all your players signed. Some guys at junior level don't know what they're doing at this stage of the season even, so you're trying to get everyone signed. It's a very difficult task for Robbie Williams, you'd imagine, just to even get his players training in time for this game with the holiday season, like the same with Usher as well. So even though it brings about its challenges, it is a great opportunity, and I know that Pike have in the past run the likes of Sligo Rovers close in cup competitions.
Yeah, I think you're right. Look, it's a mammoth task to get everything together, and but in fairness to Pike, they're the old dogs for the hard road. They've had some fantastic victories away from home, obviously in the FAI Junior Cup and the Munster Junior as well, and they do have that kind of indomitable spirit that they can dig out a result at times where when you don't think that it's quite possible. And maybe if the two Limerick sides are in the hat for the next round, it would be a good test of the appetite of the Limerick public if it was Treaty United versus Pike, above in the Marcus Field. Should get a decent gate there.
Yeah, whatever about the hoops of Shamrock Rovers, maybe Treaty and Pike Rovers in a local derby would actually whet the appetite more. And there's always a debate about who could play senior and who couldn't. That might put it to bed in some cases. But that would be an interesting one. We obviously wish both of those Limerick teams the best of luck, and we'll be keeping a keen eye over it on the weekend. And obviously, we'll be back next week with the help of God, myself and Noel, and we'll have our 25th episode of the Soccer Scene. So my thanks once again to Noel for joining us again this evening, and we will hope to see you next week.